all this stuff that you have questions about, that I have questions about. We're gonna spin the wheel, and then wherever it lands is what we're gonna talk about that day.
So we'll hope you'll join us on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. for Say What on YouTube Live.
And we're here! Yay! Welcome everybody to Say What! We're so happy to be here with you guys this week. So we're gonna start the show today with some crazy stuff happening in our beautiful state of Texas. Petra, let us know what the hell's going on right now. What is happening?
Well, depending on, what your current thoughts are, beliefs are, what you think about social issues and social justice, and all that good stuff. So in this last week, our Texas legislature has passed a pretty draconian abortion ban all the way down to 6 weeks, which is, of course, almost impossible for a woman to know at that point that she's pregnant. Is often missed, and so while it's federally legal, it's getting harder and harder. And they now think everybody has to go out of state for abortion if they should need it, impacting, of course, a woman's right to choose and her reproductive freedom. And then the second thing is we passed a massive voter suppression, voter limitation law under the guise of fairness. Every precinct can only have one voter place, and limiting all of the mail-in and whatever all else it is, rather than doing it by population. Of course, the areas that have more population need more voter places. I mean, it just makes sense in actual fairness, but fairness of having one in every district, I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is permitless carry. You can carry a gun now without needing a permit. You can carry it anywhere, everywhere, schools, churches, doesn't matter. And it is up to the school or the church, whomever the business, to say to you, sorry, you can't carry that here. As easy as it is to do with masks, surely it will be just as easy to do with guns. I'm sorry, you can't carry that here. But otherwise, you can carry it anywhere, and it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you have a health issue. It doesn't matter if you have a history of domestic violence, which we've seen both mental health and domestic violence are linked with shootings and especially mass shootings, and that we now have that. And it's pretty extraordinary. I mean, flies completely in the face of the slow but steady work that's being done in what apparently feels to some people the wrong direction, which is really building our democracy, making it possible for more and more people to exercise their right to vote. Which is cornerstone to our democracy. And it's, no wonder that people continue to be apathetic or decide it's not worth it, right? And really elevating women to a position of being able to make their own decisions, as opposed to requiring a parent or a husband or a doctor to tell them what's okay and not okay, or a religious leader who generally is a man. The idea that, what are we in the Wild West now? You can just carry your gun into the saloon and somebody doesn't like you, and it's now whoever can draw fastest. I mean, we have enough shootings, road rage shootings, and the shootings of police officers, and the shooting of Black men, and the domestic shooting, and people going into churches, and people going into schools and bars and salons in Florida, and just, well, you people are all just making me sex crazed, so I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
And how do you, engage with all of that without, and so the question always for me is, it doesn't really matter to me whether it's right or left. It doesn't matter to me whether it's Republican or Democrat that are putting some of these things forward. It's not real. I mean, the point from a spiritual point of view is what furthers the evolution of life and the evolution of consciousness, what furthers our civility, our coming together with love and kindness, our ability to actually engage from a higher level as opposed to purely from either knee-jerk reaction or fear or, I'm going to just be in charge and tell you what you're going to do, right? I mean, we've been growing steadily, really since the inception of the United States. It's been a big experiment by the people, for the people. And the people are clearly, I mean, right now, there's such a movement and has been for 150 years in this direction, very, very steadily. And it's a little mind-boggling.
That's what's baffling about me, is that we know that most Americans are for common sense gun control. That's not even that's not a maybe, that's just a fact. Most Americans, we are in agreement on this, and yet why is it that our politicians are doing the opposite when we are for the people, by the people, and yet you are literally going against the people's will? And I could not wrap my head around this permitless carry. It was so bombastic to me that I thought it was a joke. Like, this has to be a meme. There's no way this is a real thing. And then it passed, and I was like, holy shit. What are we? Are we just a clown show in Texas? What's going on here?
Well, and now imagine that Black men decide to permitless carry.
Ooh, okay. Don't start, Petra. Oh my God.
Right?
Oh my God.
So we think it's really only white men who can permitlessly carry?
No.
So let's just exacerbate all of that. Let's just throw a grenade right in the middle of that.
Right.
Right. And so, I mean, again, it comes back to, in my way of thinking, Plato talks about life as politic, right? The word politics means getting a group of people together to try to find an agreement about how to move forward. That's what the word politics means. And we've turned the word politics into partisanship, to mean partisanship, to mean party rule, to mean being in power. And the role of government really is to create a container in which people's lives can flourish. And we have this amazing experiment in the United States. I mean, it's truly an experiment that says we're going to try to allow people's lives to flourish in a way that is a supportive of their individuality, right? It comes right out of New England and the Transcendentalists. And for better or for worse, we have been slowly but surely trying to live that experiment. Obviously, not everybody included, obviously very unevenly, but there has been this is the ideal that is being sought to be lived out, right? And civil society is designed to have this government that is designed to create a container in which that's possible. So one would think that, we would think about the safety of our children in the schools. We would think about the safety of our religious places when we say we have freedom of worship, the safety, and if we want to really say all people are created equal, then all people have to be able to vote. And there's so much spiritual idealism in the founding documents of the United States of America. It's truly extraordinary. Most of the founding fathers were not Christian. They were actually deists. They were Freemasons and they were deists. And they knew they were creating an ideal. But that's what we do spiritually, right? What we do spiritually is we think about what's the ideal life? What's the kind of life that we want to have? Clearly, if we want to have it, we're not having it now, right? And so then we invite that divine urge to kind of move us forward in that direction. And we keep trying to allow that divine urge to guide us, to intuit, we tried that, but maybe that wasn't it. Maybe it's this, right? And our spirituality guides us to a forward a forward motion
Yeah.
in life. And right, and that's at the heart of our founding documents and the American ideal, right? The French Revolution was built on the same thing, comes right out of the Iroquois nations. That there's something valuable about that, which is embedded in our Christianity, which comes right out of Plato. Think on these things, that which is good, beautiful, and just. Think on these things. If you think on these things, you begin to align. You begin to align with your words, your actions. You begin to align, right? It's straight Plato. It's straight out of the Gospels, and it's a part of what the American not the American political system, government was founded on.
Yeah.
And how is this good, pure, and just? How is it? How?
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I saw this really interesting post on Facebook, and it was like, we have this fear of being propagandized, and they were saying to be propagandized is to believe that you can't have multiple political parties, that you can't have universal health care, that you can't have paid leave, that women shouldn't have access to equal anything, work pay, anything. The propaganda is believing that you can't have any of these things when every other developed nation in the world, every other developed country in the world has it. And we tout to be the most powerful, to be the smartest, to be the best, to be the greatest, and we have none of those things. And every other developed nation has those things. But so talk about propaganda, like, we are led to believe that we can't have those things in this country. It's not possible for us. Why is it not possible? It makes no sense. We are the richest and the most powerful. It's crazy. I mean, that's propaganda. Because I remember reading that going like, oh my God, have I been? I have been. Because I was like, there's no way this is happening. I have been propagandized to believe that this isn't possible for America. Mm-hmm. That meme blew my mind because I was like, oh my God, it happened to me. Yeah, so that's the scary part.
Right. Yeah, this goes all the way back to some of the other conversations that we've had. And I'm sorry if I've cut in. I feel like my mic is a little off on timing, guys. So I apologize.
Cut as much as you want.
But it just goes back to the whole idea of who's controlling the narrative, who's taking care of the narrative and deciding what we believe, because that is a big thing. Media indoctrination, the reattribution of different memory, all that stuff is carried and garnered by a certain set of people. And if we don't move ourselves into those positions to check those balances, then we don't have that kind of access and control. And that's why I'm so glad that we're part of a community like CSLDallas, where we're learning the consciousness that we have to come into things, and then in our own lives we go out and then check the balances where we can. I think that's something that we have to do, right?
Yeah, we had an interesting conversation at our core council, our governing body, the other day, and the conversation was about furthering the teaching of critical thinking. Right? Wow. Our spirituality actually requires that. It requires critical thinking. I have to critically think about the things I believe. I'm stupid. Well, I only believe that because I was told I was stupid 40 million times when I was a kid. Doesn't make it true, right? I have to critically question the things that my teachers and politicians and spiritual leaders tell me. Can I have a firsthand experience of spirituality? Is it true for me? Because I'm willing to do the work to have the experience. And if it doesn't ring true, and if I don't have the experience, then maybe that belief doesn't need to be taken on, right? To critically think. And by definition, that allows us to critically think about how we're advertised to, critically think about the media that we take in. I noticed the other day, all of a sudden I noticed, wow, this is really interesting. I'm attracted to the opinion pieces. And I realized that for quite a while now, I was skipping the news and I was reading the opinion pieces. Opinion pieces aren't news.
Right.
They're somebody's
Yes.
opinions. And so, some of them are interesting, right? I like to read pro and con. I like to read good and bad. I like to read, positive about the current government, but negative about the current government, whatever it is. But I realized that I was skipping over the news to read opinion pieces. And that's where it gets swayed, right? And when a news article is then written in the style of an opinion piece and it touts itself as a news article, then you're really in trouble.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to really critically think about the language that's being used, the pejorative words that are being used, the tone that's being used, what's being elevated, what's being denigrated, right? Or is it really objective news? I mean, I go back to my mother who loved Walter Cronkite. There was a whole cadre of a whole, a time period where, and the point was he delivered the news.
Yeah.
And with the few times when he, stopped doing that and had like emotion to it, like they're epic and they're meaningful because he was objectively giving the news. This is what happened. Here's who said what, right? Without analysis, without interpretation, just this is the news. And I thought, you want to talk about being propagandized, right? I really had to stop and think about, okay, really, am I reading only opinion pieces that are leaning a certain way?
Mm-hmm.
Because those are the ones that I, agree with.
I've had to have that same conversation, and it sucks.
But it's important.
Yeah.
Right? It's so important. I remember in my philosophy class having to read all the Plato line of philosophy and then reading the Aristotle line of philosophy, right? And of course, they're fighting like cats and dogs the whole way, right? Until you realize, of course, it's a both and. You need a little bit of this and you need a little bit of that, which is completely what and so ultimately, it's the polarization that to me is all about power that has become the real issue. Right? It's no longer about governance. It's about power, which power is always about money. And that's what is so, to me, antithetical from a spiritual point of view. I tend to be pretty moderate. I'm a centrist in a lot of ways, and spiritually liberal, fiscally conservative. I believe in conserving our planet and our resources. I believe in preserving our American traditions. I think that's really important. And I think there's a middle ground. I think there's always a middle ground. And we have forgotten that the point of our democracy is to find the middle ground.
Yeah.
And our gridlock in Washington was designed. The people who wrote the Constitution and created, they literally deliberately designed in gridlock so that coalitions would need to be made, so that you would have to move towards the center. And hopefully the center really thinks about long-term well-being of business, people, planet. Yeah. People, planet, profit, right? All three of them have to work together, because without any one of those, the whole thing collapses.
Right.
And when we get to the extreme, only profit, only planet, only people, only, right? We've lost the point. So read the Federalist Papers. If you've never read the Federalist Papers, read the freaking Federalist Papers. Read de Tocqueville's, Alex de Tocqueville. He was a Frenchman. He came over to the United States after the Revolution, and the Democracy of America. Read some of these. It gives us some idea of the ideas. Now, granted, of course, they're all being played out by people, and we're all not as fully invested in the ideal as we would like it to be. But at least we could understand what the ideal is. Where we're headed, where we're going, what's trying to be created, right? Because we have to do the same thing for ourselves. What kind of a life are we trying to create? Otherwise, we're just in knee-jerk autopilot. Oh my God, I can get on such a soapbox about this. It's just this crazy making.
Know.
Then I talk to people from the South and I think, what did you learn in school? Where was all of the whole thing about, the abolitionist movement? And where was the whole thing about the states' rights versus the federalist rights, and what really the Civil War was really all about? And all, I mean, and all, it's just non-existent. It's just, I talked to my partner who was born and raised in the South, and I'm like, you didn't learn that in school? Really? I learned that in 8th grade. She'll ask me, how do you know that? Let's see, 7th grade history?
Yeah, public education.
What?
Yeah. Public education that's not in the South. You learn about this?
How is that even possible? How is that even possible?
It's pretty nuts. I mean, I've read about like how Texas petitioned for only certain textbooks get to be taught in Texas classrooms.
Oh, they just did a new one.
What?
Yeah, they just did a new one. They've now taken out a critical criticism of race in Texas. They've been doing it for years. And Shakera, you're exactly right. This is why people who have a more progressive point of view have to start running for office. You have to run for the Board of Education. You have to run for your local city council. You have to start in the process. You have to start running for these things. And yeah, is it pleasant? No. Is it important? Yes. Right. And every voice gets to be the table. That doesn't mean the people who don't believe that gets kicked off. Right. It means that all the voices are at the table. That's the point. It's not that the point is that it's not just one voice at the table.
Right.
It's got to be all voices at the table. And then you find that way, that larger middle ground. And that third way, Bill Urey calls it the third way, that is actually something that's inclusive and better than either one way or the other.
Yeah, totally.
I'm going to start pounding on my desk.
I know, I love it so much. But let's give a quick shout out to Kia and Lahoma Faye for joining us. Thanks for being here, ladies. You guys are amazing. Also, notice that if you're watching from other parts outside of Texas, in DFW, we are storming quite a bit, so you might hear lightning and storms. And if we lose power and the stream starts or stops, just know that we lost power. That's what happened.
Happened last night in class.
Did it really? Oh, no. Oh, shit. So there's a heads up on that. So we're going to go ahead and play with this. Let's see what happens. Because Petra's right. We could spend the whole hour talking about all this stuff. Here we go. Money. First off, I want to go to what I learned about. First of all, Petra, tell me about money, because the way you and Karen talk about it, that it's simply another form. It's just a form of abundance. But the way you say it, the way you talk about it, is so beautifully said. It's like proof of your consciousness working, or like, how did you put it exactly? I never remember how you put it exactly. Say it again.
Ways to talk about money, right? But from a spiritual point of view, I love what Karen says. You think of money, right? What do we call it? We call it currency. Mm-hmm. We call it currency. So it's the current of energy. Money is simply energy moving between us. And if we were living 10,000 years ago, we'd be bartering sheep. Right. Which is the way in which, or I'd have sheep and you'd have grain, jade, silk, yeah. And right, and Shakera would have her horses, and I'd go to Shakera, hey, I'll give you 2 sheep for one of your horse, right? But over time, right, that all became, because we traveled more and everything expanded. It's really hard to drag your sheep around everywhere. So then you started having little chits. But this chit's worth 10 of my sheep, or whatever it is. I mean, it's literally what the invention of money was. Now today, our money represents our time. Mm-hmm. It represents the amount of energy that we're willing to give to the workforce. So the more decisions you make, the more money you make, because that's the highest form of energy that you can contribute, right? Making choices, making decisions, as opposed to simply following them. And so currency, it's money. Money is simply the way that we've agreed to capture that currency so that we can identify it. And then the other thing that I like to talk about too is, if currency is nothing but energy, it's hard sometimes to talk about energy. I have the energy of peace. I'm the energy of joy. I'm harmonious, except for when I'm not, right? And I can be completely lying to myself. I can have a fabulous, peaceful meditation and then go out and curse and swear on the highway, and then, get really mad at work. And I'm not really that. And so the other thing that I love to do a lot of abundance work, a lot of work with manifesting money and manifesting things like that. Why? Because you can count it. You either have it or you don't.
Right.
You've either manifested or you haven't. And so it's not about, oh, let's all be, rich American dream. And I'm a strong proponent of sustainability. But the reason that you need money to live in this world, one, and two, you can't fool yourself on your spiritual demonstrations.
There it is.
Right? You can't. You've either manifested it.
Yep.
You've said, I'm going to make a little more money at my job, or I'm going to increase my prosperity in this way, or I'm going to, right? And it's either happening or it's not.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's I think, I'm going to get so much trouble by saying this. I think this is why so many metaphysicians and spiritual people still buy into it's more spiritual to be poor. Because they don't actually want to prove it to themselves. They're afraid. They're actually secretly afraid it doesn't work. They're secretly afraid that they don't deserve it. They secretly don't realize that it's actually simply the law of cause and effect that we're working with. And they still think somehow God has to decide whether we're going to get it or not.
Well, yeah.
And so they're afraid to prove it. They're afraid to throw down the gauntlet and say, if this law is a law and it works, and this is the way it works, if I work it the way it's supposed to work, I should be able to manifest this. And you can't fudge, right? Whereas you can fudge on, I'm more peaceful, or you can fudge on, I've forgiven, or and you can fudge on, I'm feeling more, like myself, all of those things, because they're a little harder to measure.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's really powerful to do work with money, with abundance, not for the sake of being able to say, look how rich I am.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And not even for the sake of, it will make me happy. Right? I'm going to stop talking here in a minute and let Shakera get a word in edgewise. But it is interesting to note that studies have shown that once you make somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000 at this current rate of inflation, I'm sure it'll change over time. Making more money after that doesn't make you any happier.
I read the exact same study. Yep.
Because you actually can do what you want to do in your life.
Yeah.
Basically you can have your home, you can go to school, you can raise your children, you can travel a little bit, you can, you can have a life. And so we don't talk about abundance and money because we think money is going to make us happier. We need enough money to do what we want to do. We want to have financial freedom. That's what we want, financial freedom. You can have financial freedom at almost any level of income. But we like to work with it because it teaches us how to manifest, and it teaches us how to use the law unequivocally without thinking somehow we have to be good or God has to approve or any of that kind of nonsense. Shakera, go. I'm done talking now.
Look at you trying. You have to cut yourself off.
She nailed it, though. That was perfect.
I know. Isn't it beautiful? And one of the things that I love that Rev Karen demonstrated in one of our celebrations was that when we cut off that supply, right? When we cut off the supply of good, when we cut off the supply like circulation, we cut off one place, we cut off every place. And so one of the things that I love about the way that Science of Mind approaches prosperity is recognizing that, like my elders talk about money is nothing but trees and berry juice, honey. And so this is God-given, right? This is God-given for all of us in whatever way you take up that currency, all things are of God. And so when we stop allowing that to flow, then we stop that in our own lives in other places. And so in these African spiritual traditions that I run with, one of the reasons why I appreciate it and grow in that is because we don't have that complex around you should be poor to be spiritual. In fact, your spirituality should be reflected in your prosperity in every area of your life. And so I really love that Science of Mind teaches you practically how to apply that and how to look at the good really may manifest in your life. And money is no less an extension of that.
Yeah.
It's no less an extension of that.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's just where I'm at with it.
It's beautiful. And think of all the weird ways in which we talk about money, cold, hard cash, and we can talk about money as being dirty. And I mean, it's all kind if you want money, you're really not very spiritual because you seek first the kingdom of heaven. Well, the kingdom of heaven is within. right? And the kingdom of heaven is the expression of who we are. And on this time and place, we need money. Actually, what we need are little numbers. We don't even need money anymore.
That's true. You're right.
We need little numbers in our bank account that we can move around with our card, with a plastic card. That's really all we need.
How true. How
It's not even actual money anymore, right? And so if it's all energy that we're just simply exchanging, and it's, you know, and I think the downside or the biggest fallacy is that we'll be happy when we have a certain amount of money in the bank. And Shakera, I think you'd hit the nail on the head, right? Because there's no amount of money that's going to satisfy. What satisfies us is the circulation, right? We are financially free to do the things we want to do, to give what we choose to give. We can feel the inflow and the outflow, the in-breath and the out-breath, right? You can't just take in and in and in and in. Eventually you have to exhale.
Yeah.
And so that, and the act, the law of circulation, the act of contributing in some significant way is like a statement of faith. I know I have enough, so of course I can give this much money. Of course I can give this much money. Karen and I figured it out. We give probably 20% of our income away. And it's fabulous. And we just bought a cabin in the woods. Okay, we're ministers. It's not like we make big giant bucks. We make a living. We make a living, right? And we are financially free on the living that we make because we're not fooled by thinking it's the money that makes us financially free. It's the circulation that makes us financially free. And it's the recognizing of what money actually is that makes us financially free. And it's the choosing also of what you want to spend your money on, right? Instead of, again, being fooled by media and what you're supposed to have, right? But actually what it is that you want to have. So my example for this is, I don't buy fancy cars and I don't buy big fancy houses. I buy cabins in the wood because that's what makes me happy. And I spend a lot of money on traveling. I spend as much money on traveling as other people spend on their cars or their houses, right? But if you want to buy a car and a house, great. I choose to take advantage of my financial freedom in a certain way. So the last thing I'll say about that is sometimes, of course, spiritual people and spiritual people don't like to have a conversation about budgeting. We like to talk about inflow and we like to talk about outgo, but we don't like to talk about this middle portion, right? Called what do I do with what I have, which is called stewardship. We don't like that part because we believe that budgeting is limiting. Why would I limit it to only traveling? Can't I travel and have a big house and have a car and have a. Well, you can, but you're going to probably end up raping the planet if you do. So let's think about that. But more importantly, budgeting is a fundamental practice that we teach for all spirituality teachers. What is it? Choosing. It's simply choosing. I'm choosing now to spend my money on a home because I have a family and I have a lot of people I want to have in my home. It's choosing now I want to travel because I don't need to have as big a home anymore. So now I can travel more. It's choosing, well, I'm not going to travel because actually I'm choosing to go to school. Actually, I'm choosing to really invest in my children. Right? Budgeting is nothing more than choices, right? And yes, you can absolutely go out to eat every single day if you choose. We discovered that we would rather eat at home and spend all that money on traveling. I'd rather eat out in Europe. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm limited. I can actually eat out every day at home, but then I might not be able to eat out as much in Europe as I would like, and I like to eat out in Europe.
Yes.
Right, and so we forget that whole stewardship piece about money, which is in between the inflow and the outgo.
Right.
Right, and it's just about choosing, and we don't like to choose. We want to believe we can have it all. We just can't necessarily have it all at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So let's break it down some more. Let's talk about abundance practice. What are some of the spiritual practices that we teach and use here at CSLDallas in Science of Mind in regards to specifically abundance?
Well, what's something that you do, Oscar?
I literally, again, it goes back to knowing. I just know it's taken care of. I know I know that I always have more than enough. And somehow I always have freaking more than enough.
So if you have an
Always.
unexpected bill, you don't freak out.
I never freak out. See, this is where me and Sean, my husband, this is where this is where we're very different. He will freak out. And I'm like, oh, we got it. We got it. Don't worry about it. AC broke. Oh, don't worry. We got this. We got this. No worries. And every single time, it's fine.
Yes.
It's all taken care of. Everything is paid for. And we have more than enough. We have more than enough. Because I know we have more than enough.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so that's something that that I've learned here at CSLDallas, and I have more than enough.
I love that. That's awesome. Shakera, what about you?
I like to really bless my money, especially when it is in physical form. One of the ways I was taught is to actually like hold my money and bless it. And bless it, give thanks for receiving it, and bless it and give thanks for giving it. And that circulation is occurring. And then of course you can do that in your phone with your messages and your memos, like
I
things I was
love
able to
that.
send to your boss. I love that.
Beautiful.
What about
I write thank you on every check I write in the memo line. If I don't have to write it, or even if I have to write an invoice number or whatever, I always write thank you in there, right? Because I remember learning the idea that, do you realize that the electricity company gives you a month's worth of electricity before you pay for it?
Yes. It's a trust transaction.
When you write that check, you're thanking them for giving you a month's worth of electricity. And like, that was like a light bulb moment for me. Now, it's so expensive and I can't believe blah, blah, blah. That was like a light bulb moment for me. Oh my God. Yeah. And my mortgage, which I don't have anymore, we've paid off, was the mortgage company is loaning me money so I can live in a house.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Now, of course, we can have a conversation about ways in which that practice is not done well or properly.
Correct. Yes.
But in general, right, that is also the fundamental idea of a mortgage. And so I love that blessing, right? Blessing the money. For me, it's giving money away. I tithe. I've been tithing since 1978. I've been tithing. I've turned businesses around by tithing. I've taught other people to turn their businesses around. I've kept a spiritual community going through 2 recessions. I've helped other communities and other businesses manage really deep recessions by remembering that when we give, and we give gratefully and joyfully, we are in fact giving out of the knowingness that there's always enough. Right. So there's always enough. And so this is my like outrageous act of, I have so much I can give it away.
Yeah. Right.
Boom. Because I know I have enough. And so these are all really powerful things that we can do. One of the things that I couldn't get really, when I first got into science of mind and metaphysics, I really had a hard time understanding what abundance really meant. Because when I heard a lot of people talk about abundance, to me, it felt a little bit materialistic, like how big of a car and how fancy of a house and how much furs and jewels and things. And I was like, I'm not sure that's exactly, because I know that none of that's going to make us happy, right? I mean, that I already knew. So I tried to get a hold of abundance and the idea that it's infinite abundance. It doesn't run out. And so, as cliche as it sounds, I am not kidding you. I spent time imagining going to the Ocean City, New Jersey shore, which is where I grew up. When we weren't going to Europe in the summer, we would spend the summer at the Ocean City, New Jersey shore. And if you, like, I would imagine picking up a handful of sand, trying to count the grains of that. And then I would think, that's a ridiculous amount just there. And then I would look up and down the beach. And I think that particular beach is like 3.5 miles long, X wide, based on the tide. And I would think, how many handfuls of sand and how deep is it? How many handfuls of sand is that? And then I would think, okay, this beach actually stretches all the way up to Cape Cod and all the way down to Florida. I mean, and this is the exact thought experiment I did. And then I thought, okay, so now you got to go through the Gulf. Now you got to go around the Gulf Coast. Now you got to imagine all of South America, California. Now you got to imagine the whole other continents, all the islands, all the beaches in the world. How many handfuls of sand and how many grains of sand is that? Okay, that may be a finite number, but that's more than I can possibly even bend my mind around. And that doesn't even begin to encompass infinite abundance. So then I started doing that with leaves on the tree. Have you ever tried to count the leaves on a mature oak tree? I actually have. It's virtually impossible, but it's a ridiculous number, right? And then you think about the hardwood forests in the south, and you think about the boreal forests all the way across Russia, and you think about how many trees that is. And then you got to go into the Amazon, and well, and then if you want to do needles of, I mean, it just becomes this ridiculous. And all of that is life, right? All of that is an expression of life. And there's enough sun, water, soil, nutrients in the soil, unless of course we get in the way, but in general, there's enough of all of that for all those leaves, not only to grow, but to flourish, and then to grow again the next year. And the year after that, and the year after that. And how long has the Amazon jungle been doing that? Like how many ridiculous hundreds of millions of years? I mean, it's mind-boggling, right? So I do these thought experiments, and I think, okay, I might barely be approaching a little bit of what infinite abundance, life's abundance is, right? The flourishing of life's abundance. So if that's happening for the trees and the planet, why would that not happen for you and me? And if it happens to come in the form of money, as opposed to the form of nutrients from the soil, well, that's because the human being in the 21st century, that's what we use for energy. Plants use sunlight, these what comes out of the soil. Animals use the plants and animals they eat, we use money. So that was a whole series of like deep contemplations and what does that actually mean? And I think, Oscar, you hit the nail on the head. There's always more than enough. Truly.
Yeah, truly.
Right? As long as we don't interfere, we interfere climate and all that kind of stuff, but we also interfere for ourselves. We interfere with our limited thinking. We interfere with our lack consciousness. We interfere with our fear. We interfere with our belief it can't be done. We interfere with our belief, well, my parents were not prosperous. My family's just not prosperous. I just grew up poor, and so therefore I'm always going to be poor, or whatever it is, right? We interfere. I like doing those kind of thought experiments because basically it explodes my brain, and then it makes place for an intuitive knowing. Right?
I love that, intuitive knowing. Ooh, I love that. So for people out there who may be in a place right now where they're not feeling very abundant, they're not feeling very prosperous, what are some practical tools they can use right here, right now to lift them out of that and to start that law of circulation going? I know the answer, but I wanted to poke it to you guys.
Well, I mean, I will tell you that project, that process that I just told you.
Yeah.
I did when I was making $495 a month and my rent was $295. And I was living for the last week of every month on apples, peanut butter, and popcorn. That's the process that I did because I didn't want to just mouth the words. I live in an abundant universe. I wanted to experience that abundant universe, and I needed to stop looking at my checkbook, which would give me false evidence. I needed to find the evidence in the actual evidence that I lived in an abundant universe. And when that shifted for me, everything changed.
Yeah.
So that to me is actually one of the most practical tools I can give. I have others, but we'll see what you guys say.
Shakera, you go.
Oh my goodness. Well, you said apples and peanut butter. I said, well, goodness, you must have been my roommate because I know I
Probably. I still love apples and peanut butter, but I don't have to live on it.
I love that.
Right, the
Wow.
mattress on the
I
floor.
Hmm.
yeah, yep, all that.
All that.
Gratitude, of course, is the big one because that gratitude is circulated. What have I received? Where can I give? What is present in my life right now? And I don't think that there's a number of things that you can be grateful for. I think when you start with the smallest thing, I have fresh water. I was able to wash my, I was able to wake up. I was able to see the sunshine or the rain, count how many raindrops are coming down. Try it if you want to. I think that's a place to start. And I think that's just like Petra's thought experiment. It's really being grateful for every little thing
Yeah.
and allowing more of that to flow into our lives, whether it be money, whether it be love, joy, different types of experiences.
Yeah.
And Petra, that thought experiment, I mean, it like I tell y'all all the time, if I had a wig, I'd take it off and
I know.
throw
Just
it.
snatched my wig. She done
Like it
snatched
was
my
just,
wig right off.
I'm talking about mind blown. I'm talking about wig
I know.
blown,
Wig
clothes
blown.
blown. Just take it all off. Yes, it was
Wig blown.
wonderful. Wig blown. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. So thank you
Well,
for sharing that with us today.
I am salty AF because Shakera took mine, because that's literally what I do. When I fall into that kind of death spiral of thoughts, I go right back to gratitude. I literally will start naming things off that I'm grateful for. And it can be literally be like, I'm grateful that I have a cover over me, a blanket over me right now. I'm grateful that I have a husband who loves me unconditionally. I'm grateful that I have clean air to breathe. I'm grateful that I'm sleeping on a warm bed. You know what I mean? Like, I just start naming things. And again, once you start, Shakira's absolutely right. You always have an abundance of things to be grateful for. It immediately, like, snaps me out of whatever the hell was happening before, and I can start seeing the truth again. The truth that starts to be revealed again. So, dang it, girl, you took mine. But that's exactly what I do, is I go back to gratitude. I go back to gratefulness.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
really important that we don't associate being able to be grateful with being first world,
Mm. Wow.
right? For me, I equate that with the idea that people who are very ill, and one of the ways, or they have a particular ailment or a particular issue in a part of their body, and one of the ways that I work with people is I ask them to be grateful for all of the parts of their body that's working.
Mm.
Because usually what we do is we fixate on the pain and we fixate on the one area of our body that isn't working, but we don't fixate on that usually anywhere from 70 to 98% of our body that actually is working.
Right.
Right. And so it's not just about maybe you live in a place where you don't have clean water or you don't have clean air, but there is always something to be grateful for. And it's worth spending the time, because it is one of the most amazing ways to dig ourselves out of a hole of lack and limitation.
Yes.
We could simply be grateful for the fact that we're able to think about whether or not we're grateful.
Mm.
Right. We can start there. And we can start, are we grateful because there's someone with us? Or are we grateful because we can still have an unadulterated thought? Or are we grateful because we haven't lost our tongue and we can still speak?
Mm.
Or perhaps we still have our hands, they haven't been cut off. Or
Right.
our feet. Or maybe we don't have a floor. Maybe we're sitting on a dirt floor, but at least we're not sitting in the middle of a river. Or, right, you can always find a place to start. And so it's not I've traveled enough around the world that sometimes it's true. I'm grateful that I have a roof, 4 walls, and a floor. I'm grateful that I have refrigeration and electricity and water. And if I can start there, I can remember that first world is not the norm for a lot of people. And therefore, no matter how shitty my life might feel at the moment, I have so much to be grateful for if I live
Yes.
in that kind of an environment. And really, I should get over myself.
I say that all the time to myself. Just get over yourself,
Yeah.
dude. Dude, get over yourself.
Or and if you feel really, really, really impoverished, go walk through a department store, a grocery store, and just think about the amount of choices that you have.
Hmm.
Even if you
Right.
only have $2, the amount of choices of things that you can buy with that $2
Exactly.
is unbelievable compared to other places. So let's at least be grateful for what we have. Sometimes I'm really astonished of the lack of abundance consciousness that people have who actually have a fair amount.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it doesn't feel like enough. I will say that that's the other tool that I've used, because I don't want metaphysical or spiritual abundance and prosperity thinking to be coupled with sort of the nonstop acquiring of things.
Yep.
It's really gotten us into a lot of trouble in a lot of different ways. And so I also spent a lot of time contemplating the word enough. And most people, when they say, well, I have enough, what they hear is, well, I have barely enough. What they want is more than enough. Well, more than enough is okay. But what they really want is excess. Well, excess is what's gotten us into climate change and all the problems that we're having, right? And so I began to think about enough. Well, how many of us have gotten up from a Thanksgiving dinner having eaten more than enough?
Oh my God, my gut will tell you, sister.
It's painful, right? It's like, oh my God, I ate too much.
Yes.
You gotta go lay down. You gotta crash for 2 hours because you ate too much, right? and so I learned to equate enough with satisfied. Think about when you're satisfied with a really delicious meal and you actually turn down dessert because you know that dessert's going to push you over the edge, and you push back from the table and you think, wow. And you're just filled the right amount, right? And your mouth is happy and your tummy's happy and your eyes are happy with what you got, and everything is like, this is perfect, right? I mean, I spent a lot of time cultivating the experience of enoughness, and I equated enoughness with satisfied. And then I could look around my home. Am I satisfied with my home? Is it enough? Not like, is it barely enough, but is it really enough? Am I satisfied? Well, if I'm not satisfied, well, then yes, I can actually do something about that. I need a few more square footage because I need a home office, or I want to put a pool table in for my son, or I want to entertain more. Great. But at some point there is that place where we say, well, I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied. Right. And that also was a really powerful tool. I also found myself I didn't buy nearly as many inappropriate late night things off the television by any off Facebook, because I'm satisfied. Right. And so I'm not actually fooled. I'm no longer enticed by stuff I don't need.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm satisfied. I have enough. And when I don't feel like I have enough, or I want something else, that's okay too.
Yeah.
That's another really powerful thing that I worked with, because that helped me add to gratitude and see what I already have. Because of course, there's that old biblical phrase Jesus was supposed to have said, which is probably the most difficult statement in the New Testament. The person who has that which more will be given, and the person who doesn't have even that which they have will be taken away.
Yeah.
Right. And it is a straight definition of the law of cause and effect. If we believe that we have enough, the law says, oh, of course, you always have enough. You have enough. You have enough. You want to go traveling? Well, you have enough. Oh, you want to buy a house? Oh, you have enough. You want to start a business? Oh, you have enough. And if you don't think you have enough, the universal law says you're right, you don't have enough. And even that which you have gets taken away because you don't have enough. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's one of the most difficult passages because we think it's somehow about God loving us or not loving us. No, it is an absolute statement of the law of cause and effect.
Yeah.
So gratitude and being satisfied and really seeing what enoughness is for us, that puts us in the position of having. And when we have, even more shall be given to us. Do you see? That's what that means. And when we're in a constant state of lack or want, I want this, I want that, I want the other thing, I just don't have enough, I can never do it. There's always a new crisis. There's always a new bill to pay. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. The universe goes, the law says, oh, it's not enough. You don't have enough. You got another bill. You can't pay it. You got another bill. Oh, no, you don't have enough for that. No, you can't do that. It's just mirroring back to us exactly
Right.
and precisely the consciousness that we have. And so gratitude and all of this work is what shifts that consciousness into having. I have it in consciousness, and then the law has to produce it.
Oh my God, having. Oh my God, that like blew my mind. I'm so happy that this is going to be saved. People can watch it again and again. How fabulous. Okay, we are out of time. What a freaking awesome episode this was. Holy crap, you guys. Thank you for joining us on YouTube. You guys are so sweet. Thank you for your comments. So, as always, we'll be back next week, 1 p.m. Tuesday. Come get lunch with us. Come hang out with us. And let's dig deeper and talk more about all this great stuff that's happening. I love you guys so much. Thank you. We'll